The monitor light washed over Ethan, turning his skin pale and his eyes fixed on the shifting pixels of the battlefield. His fingers danced across the mouse, clicking with rhythmic precision while his phone buzzed incessantly on the desk, a constant stream of notifications ignored. A sharp knock echoed against the bedroom door. His mother spoke from the hallway, her voice muffled by the wood, reminding him that the final exams were only days away. Ethan did not turn his head. He kept his focus on the screen, his thumb hovering over the keys. "Relax. I will figure it out. I always do," he muttered, his voice flat and dismissive. The door remained shut. Outside, the street was quiet. Across the way, the window of the house opposite his glowed with a steady, warm light. Ethan watched Noah sitting at his desk, his silhouette bent over a mountain of textbooks, a highlighter moving in slow, deliberate lines across the paper. Ethan stared for a long moment, then reached out and pulled the blinds down, snapping the view shut. He grabbed his controller, leaned back into his chair, and let the virtual noise drown out the silence of the house. He was ahead of the game, or so he told himself, while the clock on the wall ticked toward a deadline. The night before the final exam, the house was unnervingly still. Every tick of the wall clock sounded like a hammer against the floorboards. Ethan sat at his desk, the monitor now black, reflecting his own wide-eyed stare. He reached for his history textbook, the spine cracking as he forced it open. The pages were crisp, untouched, and filled with dense blocks of text that seemed to swim before his eyes. He flipped through sections of dates, treaties, and names he did not recognize. He had never seen these chapters before. His breath hitched. He began to read, his eyes darting across lines of text, trying to force the information into his mind. He read the same paragraph 3 times, but the meaning vanished the moment he reached the end of the sentence. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic, uneven rhythm. He grabbed a highlighter, his hand trembling, and dragged it across a page, but the ink only blurred the words further. He flipped to the back, looking for a summary, but found only more questions he could not answer. The silence of the room, once a comfort, now felt like a closing trap. He pushed the book away, his palms damp with sweat. The time on his phone screen read 3 in the morning. He had 4 hours left to learn a semester of history, and the realization hit him with the weight of a physical blow. The exam hall was a tomb of rhythmic scratching. Ethan sat at his desk, his fingers locked around his pen until his knuckles turned white. He stared at the test booklet, but the questions were a foreign language. He looked at Noah, whose hand moved steadily across the paper, page after page. Ethan's pen slipped from his grip, clattering against the desk with a sharp, echoing snap that drew a dozen heads toward him. He did not pick it up. Weeks later, the bulletin board was a sea of students. Noah stood in the center, cheering. Ethan pushed through the crowd, his fingers trembling as he scanned the list. His name appeared, but the grade beside it was a failing mark. The paper seemed to vibrate in his hand. He walked home through a cold, steady rain that soaked his skin. When he stepped into the kitchen, his mother was setting the table. She looked up, her gaze shifting from his face to the report card clutched in his hand. She did not shout. She did not ask for an explanation. She simply pulled out a chair and sat down, her shoulders slumping forward as if the weight of the room had suddenly doubled. She stared at the floor, her silence absolute. Ethan stood in the doorway, the damp paper heavy in his grip, watching the light fade from her posture. Ethan moved to his desk, the surface now cluttered with the remnants of his old life. He grabbed his game console, shoved it into a cardboard box, and pushed it deep under his bed until it hit the wall. He pulled out a blank calendar, wrote study schedule in bold letters at the top, and pinned it to the corkboard. The first week was a physical battle. Every time his phone buzzed on the desk, his hand twitched, his fingers curling toward the screen out of habit. He forced his hand back to his pen, clenching his fist until the urge subsided. He started attending extra help sessions every afternoon, sitting in the front row, his back straight, his eyes locked on the instructor. He raised his hand, asking questions until his throat felt dry and his voice cracked. When a concept remained elusive, he did not close the book. He stayed in the empty classroom, staring at the diagrams until the logic finally clicked into place. He spent hours tracing equations and memorizing dates, his lamp the only light in the house long after the street outside had gone dark. He stopped looking at the clock. He stopped checking for notifications. He focused only on the ink on the page, the weight of the pen, and the steady, rhythmic sound of his own breathing as he worked through the night. The exam hall air was still, but Ethan's breathing remained steady. He opened the booklet and recognized the first question immediately. His pen moved with purpose, scratching across the paper as he filled line after line. When the results were posted, Ethan walked to the bulletin board. He found his name, the passing grade clear and high. He walked home, the paper folded tightly in his hand. He placed it on the kitchen table. His mother looked at the grade, then looked at him. She smiled, a genuine, bright expression that reached her eyes. Ethan smiled back, the weight of the paper in his hand finally feeling like a victory earned through the long hours he had spent alone, working while the world slept.